Spectrovision Radio.
Hey friends, I want to tell you real quick about another project I've been working on called Anomaly. It's an audio series that's this pretty unique blend of storytelling and guided meditation. Basically, as you listen, you become this character in a ruined land that needs your magic to heal. I didn't write this thing, but my company, Voltage, did a lot of the editing, music, and sound design. And I can honestly say I haven't heard anything like it. Immersive, transportive, and also, yes, award-winning. Specifically, the Signal Award Listener's Choice for Most Innovative Audio Experience. We talk about meditation a lot on our show, but whether or not you consider yourself a person who meditates, I think you'll really dig the magical world of Anomaly. It's sort of like those apps that make you feel like you're being chased by zombies to motivate you to do cardio, except significantly less stressful. Actually, the opposite of stressful. Okay, it was a bad comparison. Anyway, if I've piqued your interest, you can find out more at seekanomaly.com and use the code MAGIC to get 60% off your first month of full access. Oh, and by the way, Anomaly is spelled with an I-E, not a Y. But also you can find a link in the description, of course. Okay, that's my pitch. On to the show.
Welcome to God's Ghosts and UFOs, everybody. This is the biggest podcast in the universe where we talk about all the things they said weren't real. I'm Mallory Everton. I'm here with my friends Jordan and Tom. How are you two?
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
How are y'all?
We have a great episode today. Today, Jordan's going to be talking to us about map dowsing. And I have a baby update on our YouTuber who claims to have a UFO in his possession. And Tom is going to tell us about the first documented American haunting. So stick around for that. But before we start, we just wanted to say thank you so much for the reviews. They are
Seriously.
They are filling our hearts with warmth and joy. They're exactly
Yes.
what we were, the kind of thing we were hoping for. People who were finding this podcast and feeling like they found their people, or they found footing in a, let's be real, like footless zone.
Footing in a footloose.
Not footloose either. Just
No.
footless.
It's
Without
a footless
feet.
zone.
Abandoned feet, all ye who enter here.
We were literally, like TMI, but we were literally reading some reviews to each other before we started rolling tape, and it just feels like I just feel lighter and refreshed. These are
Yes,
obviously
exactly.
incredibly smart, perceptive, and physically attractive people who are leaving the reviews
So
for this show,
hot,
and
all of them.
I just love it. Yeah, hot, just smoke shows. Everyone on Spotify too.
Yeah, and we know, because our technology allows us to see you as you're writing the review.
Okay, that's creepy.
Pretty scary. Jordan, back
That's
off,
creepy.
please.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Too far now.
Try again.
Okay. Okay, here's the real thing. The real thing is that also a lot of the people who've left reviews and a lot of the people who've reached out in our comment sections, etc., have told us like how glad they are that they found the show, which is exactly why we're making this show, and it makes us feel so good and accomplished that the people that we want to find the show are finding the show. And so we're also going to just flagrantly ask for your help to get this show into the hands of more people like you who need it, want it, would have a lot of joy in listening to it, and to be part of this community with a capital C. So that's my big begging, shameless ask this week.
It doesn't have to be hard. It's not hard. Like I've done this a bunch with Emrys, my wife, where I will listen to an episode of an podcast and go like, oh my God, Emrys needs to listen to this, and just like shoot it over on a DM or a text message. So if you find something resonant, if you hear something that resonates with you and you go like, gosh, I wish so-and-so could hear this, use those buttons wisely.
Yeah.
Yes.
As Mal reminded us a few episodes ago, never suppress a generous thought. And what could be a more generous thought than sharing this show?
I mean, truly, if anything we're talking about reminds you of anyone, it's just an opportunity to connect with them. And I find that really wholesome. Sometimes I forget that a great way to reach out to my brother who I haven't spoken to in a couple months or something, just because we're busy and we live in different states. Oh, I can send him this thing because when we were kids, we were obsessed with ghosts, or we loved Bigfoot or whatever. It's just a fun way to connect with people. And we would be very grateful to have more people be able to find out about this podcast, which currently not that many people know about.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's enough of that, for God's sake.
Yes, come on.
All right. Do you guys know what dowsing is?
No.
I do.
I mean, do you mean like when you get your hair really wet? When you want your curls to be nice and
I do not
braided?
mean that.
Dowsing. I was dowsing in my Barca lounger the other day. Am I using it correctly in a sentence?
All right. Well, Tom, you said yes. Do you want to explain what it is?
Oh, well, okay. When I was a kid, I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, and my family wanted to dig a well because we lived on a mountain. And my parents brought in what was locally known as a water witch, but it was a water dowser. And they would come, and I forget what the rods, they have the two rods. Do you know what I'm talking about? I forget what they're called. And
I think it's called a dowsing rod.
Dowsing rods. Thank you. And they can either separate or connect, and they get information this way. And they found the right spot to drill, and we had a well. How that happens, I don't have a thorough understanding of.
Well, so I'm fascinated that you had like a personal experience with this. So now Mal knows what dowsing is. Dowsing is the mystical location of water underground that you cannot see or detect in any other way. And so this is pretty important if you want to dig a well. It takes a lot of resources to dig a well. And more modernly, dowsing is something that people will hire dowsers to help them locate a good drilling place to bore holes for major water works projects that they need water in a water scarce area. So I have to be transparent. I have not done a lot of deep research on this topic, but I have read an article that came out last month on Paranormal Daily News. The article in question was written by one Steve Melody, who has been dowsing for water in Australia for over 40 years. But Steve doesn't douse by walking around with a stick. He uses maps and research and the internet. And you might think, oh, so science. But no, he believes signals from underground water sources enter through his heart chakra, which his subconscious mind then interprets through involuntary body movements, or what we might call the ideomotor effect. His head nods yes or no, his pen stops on the map when it hits a water source, his hands move to measure stream width. So you might wonder what his success rate is. Well, according to Steve, conventional field dowsers in his area, so people who show up on the location and just try to find where the water is, get it right about 60% of the time. This is pretty good, but not great, considering, once again, how costly it is to bore a hole in the wrong place. Map dowsers like him, on the other hand, get it right 95% of the time, or higher. Steve claims his own record is better than 99%, which is quite a claim.
Wow.
Yeah. As an example, he talks about a sugarcane farmer who needed a bore with a low salt content and enough flow to run a traveling irrigator. Using his map dowsing techniques, Steve found 4 underground streams at different depths, each fed by separate aquifers. After checking existing bore data from neighboring properties, he determined which streams had fresh water and which were too salty. He predicted that the drill site he recommended would hit 3 specific streams, and that the bore would produce around 70,000 liters per hour. When they drilled, they hit exactly the 3 streams he predicted, and the flow rate was 70,000 liters per hour. Steve himself admits that there's no scientific explanation for how map dowsing works. He looks at a map and whatever other data he can find and then follows the signals coming through his heart chakra. He can't explain it better than that, and as far as he knows, modern science or modern physics can't either. But if his success rate is anywhere near as good as he claims, it definitely begs the question of what actually is happening here. If the ideomotor effect is involved, where your subconscious causes involuntary movements, what is the subconscious actually detecting? Is it accessing information through some mechanism we don't understand? Or is it just really good at pattern recognition from geological data, which, by the way, is still pretty phenomenal? One other thing is that Steve says that when he completely covers his heart chakra with his hands, he can't feel any signal from the water. You can either take that as evidence that supports his claims or chalk it up to psychosomatic bias. In other words, if he thinks it won't work, it won't work. Either way, assuming his success rate is legitimate, it raises some complicated questions about how information might be transmitted or received by the human body.
I'm currently Googling, can you cover a chakra? I wasn't,
what does Google say about that now?
Can you block a chakra with your hands? Yeah, like
I think you can block a chakra with your
brain.
brain. That's what I've heard is you can block, like chakras are blocked all the time. Like unblocking your chakra is the hard part.
But the idea that if I put my hand on my heart, that my heart chakra will be like closed, that feels like a mental thing that he might be doing more than a
does
physical.
feel like that.
Like maybe because what would we call a chakra? It's like an energy center? I'm not a chakra expert, but
Yeah.
I want to say it's like a valve.
By a valve,
like,
an energy valve.
Isn't it an Ayurvedic thing? It's an ancient Indian practice in much the same way that the Chinese have the energy meridians and the idea of qi, which flows through those meridians. Not only are those perfectly acceptable sort of models for understanding that kind of subtle energy, but also I think that they've been around long enough that they don't actually need to prove themselves. But when you're talking about is there something that we need to know about the way that, human beings can receive, information, extrasensory information? And I'm like, we already know. We already know that there's telepathic communication. It's already been documented. We already know that there's remote viewing is a thing, and it's been well documented. We already know that there's anticipatory behavior in people, through galvanic skin responses who are about to be showed an upsetting picture and have a response in between pressing the next picture button and seeing the image. They already know that they're going to be seeing something unpleasant. So we're receiving this kind of information all the time. And so what this dude with his maps and his geological surveys and his pen and all that stuff, to me, it's like I was thinking about tarot or dowsing rods or, I Ching or any sort of thing where you're like, I'm going to use this kind of structure to do divination. But the thing itself is not the divination. The thing itself is the sort of medium through which the information comes and you interpret it and come to an understanding about it. Like with remote viewing where they just give you coordinates or I don't even know what. They just give you a random number. But that's enough.
Yeah. The two things that I like the most about this topic or this idea is, one, the specificity. Like we're literally looking for water. You're not like sort of ambiguously just being like, oh, I'm interested in what kind of information the universe wants to send me. It's a job to be done. This is an economic story. This is a story of things that need to happen and exchanges that happen on behalf of that thing. So you're saying, all right, here's a company with investments to make, with a job to do that needs to find water. And in order to find water, they decided to hire this guy. He does not claim to be finding water with like general scientific means. He claims to be doing it with his heart chakra, and they're hiring him anyway because he's successful. There's a proof there that is like really, really compelling, because it's like you don't pay people to do something. Like you don't make a big investment, right? Unless it's going to work. And then I'm of course interested in how it works. I do sort of take it for granted that it works, and it does seem to align very cleanly with a lot of other phenomena that we agree works. I'm not much of a panpsychist in the traditional sense. Maybe I don't really know what the traditional panpsychist believes, but I'm not necessarily thinking of like water sources sending telepathic signals to this guy through his heart chakra. There's got to be something else kind of going on rather than like mind-to-mind communication. So that raises that question for me too.
I love your question. Like, how is this working? What exactly is working? Is it pattern recognition or something else? Because that's where language always fails us, and I'm very interested in that. I also take for granted, I personally just think, 100%, I think this guy can do this. It doesn't mean that the way he describes how it's working could work exactly that way for somebody else. It doesn't mean that language will translate into something that should be put in scripture or whatever. It just means that he's accessed something, and then my questions are always like, oh, can we all access that? And I think most of the time we can. Like in Ellen Langer's book, I just finished her book, The Mindful Body. She talks about how there are dogs that have been trained to be able to smell certain types of cancer. And she was like, it would be mindless for us to believe that it would be impossible for us to do the same. You can say, well, dogs have better sense of smell, but we don't actually know that we can't train ourselves to be able to smell cancer eventually. And she's just like, her whole book is just basically her harping on everything we talk about this podcast, which is just like, stay actually open-minded and be mindful about it. And then you might be capable of divining water with your heart chakra. I mean, it just seems like he's accessed something and he's using his personal language to describe how.
I personally believe that he is a savant, right? He's accruing a body of data which shows just how freaking good the guy is. And he is confident enough to make specific predictions that then, at least in this one instance, come true. So we can look at his record and judge him thereby. But he seems to be peculiarly good at this one thing that he does. And we also know of people who can look at another person and know that they're ill or know specifically what their illness is. So people have wild talents, and that sometimes you're really, really good at X and other people aren't that good. If it's math or it's divination, you know what I mean? I think we're all sort of on a spectrum of ability, and some people are savants. But it's available to all of us to a greater or lesser degree. To a greater or lesser degree. Everyone can sing, but not everybody is going to be a mezzo-soprano, you know?
Yep.
Sure.
I could try to swim as fast as Michael Phelps, and I probably wouldn't do very well, you know?
Yeah, and his body's like built specially for it. So you've got
Exactly.
like the physical body, then you also have whatever you want to call the mess of neurons that makes up a personality or a spirit or a soul or whatever you like. But it's like the combination of those two things. I've never really thought about it like that, though, Tom. When we talk about things like people being able to potentially access an amount of telepathy or remote viewing, I've never really thought about the fact that there could just be some people who are just built for a certain type. What do you call it? Savant-itude?
I call it
savant,
yeah.
Savantitude.
Yeah.
Like what is
Actually,
the practice? You know what I mean?
It's beyond aptitude. It's savantitude.
It's savantitude.
savantitude. What you said, Mel, was so resonant with me. You're like, Michael Phelps was built for it. You can see people who are quite literally built for ballet,
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that, like, in so many ways, we each of us can be sort of specialists in our own ways. Like Mark was talking about remote viewers who are really good at smelling things or having certain senses enhanced in remote viewing that they're really good at, or the one who's really good at looking into space, and who knows why. But it seems like the prerequisite for lucid dreaming or remote viewing or map dowsing is dropping the I can't formulation.
Oh, for
Literally
sure. Yeah.
just suspending your disbelief.
You can't get good at anything if you don't think you can.
That's exactly right.
We're all born with a basket of aptitudes. Some of us are born with maybe a savantitude or two. But then everything else is belief, mindset, and work. I mean, this guy's been doing it for 40 years. Like, that's mastery. That's putting in the hours. That's just like, okay, you have maybe an aptitude, maybe a savantitude, and then you work at it. If you don't do the work, if you don't show up, if you don't try, if you don't believe that you can, then you're not going to be able to do any of it.
Couldn't agree more.
I really like this topic in general. I like the idea. I mean, from a Mormon background, we talk about spiritual gifts a lot. It was something you could have the gift of faith, or you could have the gift of believing in others' faith. You could have the gift of discernment, being able to feel what other people are feeling. And there was always this idea that you could develop spiritual gifts, or that you could have inborn spiritual gifts. And I have always found it very exciting that your potential is limitless to a degree. And it can be tricky once you realize you don't have the body of Michael Phelps, that you'll never be a swimmer like that. But then to devote your life to an extent to the body you do have is a type of gratitude practice, but also it will continue to unfold all of the different capabilities that your specific body gives you. And I think I just think it's really exciting.
In its purest, best sense, in its highest sense, an economy of people is the sharing of talents. And in this situation, you have one dude who's a sugarcane farmer, and he has a job to do and is doing that job, presumably, hopefully well, right? He's providing a thing that a lot of people use. I mean, we like sugar in this country a lot. And then you have another guy who is a dowser, a map dowser. Now, would it be reasonable for us to say, well, the sugarcane farmer could have just learned how to map dowse himself, and then he didn't need to go hire the map dowser? It's like, no, like both of these people are needed in this dynamic. And then what you get is both of them get something that they need, you know? Map dowser's got to make a living, and the sugarcane farmer needed water. And one way to think about these sorts of transactions is as the exchange of talents. And yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, we can think it'd be great if like money wasn't involved, because that tends to be a bit corrupting. But at the same time,
Sure.
you know, if we could do it some other way, we would, and sometimes we do. But at the end of the day, I think if you think about that in those terms, then you stop being jealous of talents and gifts and abilities and things that other people have, aptitudes or savantitudes that other people have, and instead explore what you have, not for yourself, but to contribute to this great human project of making things better for everyone.
That's so true. And I remember the exact moment that it dawned on me that I was built a certain way to do a certain job, where I was like, I've always been, you know, really sensitive and kind of prickly and like weird in some ways. And like, you know, when you're growing up, Mal, this may be resonant with you. A lot of artists have like, you're just too much. You're too much. You need too much. Blah, blah, blah. Too loud, too much, you know, you need all the attention. But at some point I was like, wait, I'm built that way to be a communicator. I'm built that way to communicate musically or in writing. That's literally like the hand I was dealt in order to play that particular game. It might be, you know, odd to the sugarcane farmers, you know, who were built that way, but it is complementary. It's exactly what Jordan was saying, but it took me well into my adulthood to understand that I wasn't just, you know, a damaged unit.
That's very relatable, Tom. I feel very similarly. And I also think, Jordan, to your point about money being a corruptive force, it's not the only corruptive force. I think that it just doesn't matter.
No, yeah, certainly not.
It doesn't matter what we're cultivating. Like you said, you can't get good at anything if you don't turn off the "I can't do this" message in your brain. But also, you will battle your whole life to do whatever it is you've learned to do for the right reasons, whatever that means. If the word "right" is even a good word to use, but for the best reason for the moment or for the reason that the moment calls for. It's just brutal. Like to never use that skill to manipulate someone else or to try and get people to like you or to try and get money is just to say that you're not a human being. So I don't know. I bet he uses it to pull chicks is all I'm saying.
He goes out to the pub with a map. And
you know what I can do? I can tell you if there is water underneath us right now. That would be interesting to me, I guess.
Are you a hidden aquifer? Because I'm going to find you.
Hey everyone, our next segment is about James, the YouTuber who claims to have found a big metal pill-shaped UFO in the desert, then brought it home in his trunk, hid it in his basement, and started doing experiments on it. We've been following him for over a month, dropping updates every now and again. Well, a few days after we recorded this segment, things with James went a little insane. So if you've been following that story in real time, what you're about to hear will be hilariously out of date. Oh well. We're not journalists, and there's a limit to how timely we can be within the constraints of our resources. That said, you can be assured that we'll do at least one more robust update about James and his big metal pill in the near future, when we'll be able to hopefully find our way out of the psychotic mess that this story has become. For now, though, enjoy this little relic from the recent past, back when we still thought it was kind of funny and cool.
Here's a little speed bump before we get to talking about the first documented American haunting, which I'm very excited for. Here's the thing. It's actually I am a little worried this week about James, our anonymous YouTuber. For those who may have not tuned in before, I've been very closely following this YouTuber who found he claims to have found a UFO in the desert, and then he brought it back home. It looks like a big silver pill, and he's been posting every single day so that everyone who is following him, which is not very many people, but that everybody knows he's not dead. And he stopped posting 3 days ago. So I'm a little worried.
Wait, Mal.
Yeah.
You were a little bit late to our recording, and you told us you were going to be a little bit late. And so while we were waiting, I went onto James's YouTube channel, and he was live streaming.
Oh, he is alive. Oh, good.
Yeah, so he's alive. He's alive. And I'm actually so glad you brought him up, because while he was live streaming, he said something that struck me to the point that I decided to write it down. But
Damn.
someone in the live stream chat asked him, basically, has anyone been chasing you? And he said, in his prototypical James voice, a moth creature flying above my car, yes. And then he said, wow, I just realized I sound like an absolute idiot. I sound like one of these nuts, these conspiracy theorists or whatever, but I'm not. You would think that you see them, these people, talking about stuff that's definitely not true, and you're like, wow, that would never be me. And then it happens to you, and it is you. And then you're like, wow, now I am that person. But yeah, I'm only telling you what I see. And the more I record, the more I feel like they're trying to take me down. So yeah.
That's such a good,
bless his
that's
heart.
a perfect bite of everything I've been experiencing basically for the past 2 months as I've been following him. Is just like, he is so like flatly honest and transparent about how he's feeling. It's really hard for me to believe that he's playing a character. It's really hard for me to believe that he is fully lying to himself. Who knows? But I am drawn in. I continue to be drawn in. And I write things down. He says too, like, he said this in his video on November 3rd. Seems like the economy is about to collapse at any moment, which I don't know why it hasn't already, because all the money's fake. But as long as we keep pretending that it's, you know, it's like he'll just like loop in his sort of like, the world is ending and I'm on like I'm all alone here with a UFO and nobody cares. It's like actually so compelling to me.
Mal, Tom,
Yes.
we don't have to decide this now. How would you guys feel about inviting James onto the show?
I know.
Oh, I've
been waiting
already
for you
want to. What do you mean we don't have to decide on it now? I thought we already did. Of course,
He might
wasn't
not
he
want
on
to.
someone else's podcast?
He's mentioned it.
Well, he talked about it on the stream, actually. He said he might be willing to try out being a guest on someone's podcast. He wants to be careful.
We can
and
guarantee
not, like,
his anonymity, right? Mm-hmm. And we
Yeah.
can tell him that we've got.
well,
it
at
in
least
with
as
Joe
much of
Rogan.
his anonymity as he preserves on his own channel.
Right. Right.
So, sure, yeah. I mean, we won't give away any more information than he's already given away.
I've started doing a thing where I'm just like, I want to reach out to the Spiritualist
just reach
Church.
out
I
to
want
the
to talk to their
source.
mediums.
Yeah.
Reach
Yeah.
out to the source. Will you please come on and tell us about this thing instead of us talking about something we read? If there is a human being who is a primary source, of course,
All
we
right,
should
Mal.
have him on. Mal, can
Reach
you
out to
reach
him.
out?
Do it.
Yeah, I'll reach out to him. I mean, what's the best way? Do you think I just make a comment? I don't know
Yeah,
how
just
he'll
make a
take me
comment.
seriously.
Comment.
He
Comment.
has
Make
an
a comment.
email as well. I'll look up his email.
Do both.
Do both. Yeah.
I think he wants to be on our show. He wants to feel supported. He doesn't
Right.
necessarily want to like be super public with himself. So I think that we're not a huge show yet. I mean, we are the biggest podcast in the universe, but only for the people who know, only for the real ones. So
I tell people
yeah.
we're not debunkers and we don't treat the phenomena as a ticketed ride.
Yep.
And we will listen to him and bear witness. We're not going to.
That's the thing that I think I like the most about. I mean, like at one point he said, I think this was on November 6th, he said, it's like everything is supernatural and every elite person is like running the game as an administrator. He's just so paranoid because like, you know, he's been live streaming and he couldn't upload the second one and he's just feels like it's the forces that be. And like during the first one, his phone kept flipping on its own. And he was like, I don't understand, like if the thing doesn't want to be seen or what's going on. And it's like, it all looks fakeable and it all looks like it could be fake. But I feel like this person would be fascinating to talk to. So let's try.
An article published on November 9th by the West Virginia Explorer webzine caught my eye, entitled First Documented Poltergeist in U.S. Haunted This Historic West Virginia Town. It gives a broad overview on one of the oldest, best attested, and least known hauntings in American history, one with the enigmatic title of The Wizard Clip. What's amazing to me is how similar this story is to Tennessee's Bell Witch event of 1817 to 1824, and yet how comparatively obscure. At first glance, the Wizard Clip story seems paint-by-numbers folkloric. During a terrible thunderstorm in 1774, literally a dark and stormy night, a mysterious stranger arrives at the door of a certain Adam Livingston and his family who are living in Smithfield, West Virginia. At the time, it was just Virginia. But the Civil War changed everything. The man claimed he and his horse were exhausted and could travel no further. He begged Mr. Livingston for lodging. Livingston agreed, but soon found out that the stranger was not only ill, but unlikely to survive the night. When the stranger asked for last rites, the Livingstons, who were staunch Lutherans, refused, probably because they couldn't administer them, because they weren't Catholic priests. Smithfield was a Protestant town, and anyway, the nearest Catholic priest was more than a day's ride away. He would have never gotten there in time. The stranger died, and reportedly no candles would stay lit in the room where his body lay. He was subsequently buried in unconsecrated ground, and as you might guess, that's when all hell broke loose. So I'd like to read a passage from a monograph called The Mystery of the Wizard Clip, written by a Jesuit scholar, the Reverend Joseph M. Finazzi, and published in 1879. Quote, a short time after his settling in Virginia, Livingston was much disturbed by an unknown person that haunted his house. His property was destroyed, his barn was burnt, his cattle all died, his clothes were cut all to pieces, his beds burnt or cut, chumps of fire were thrust into the beds, the plates and all the crockery ware were thrown upon the floor, and what was astonishing, everything that was cut in such a manner that they could not get even a small patch that could be of any service, the things being cut in form of a half moon. Boots, saddles, etc., were cut in pieces. 3 men came from Winchester in order to free the house from what troubled it, if it were the devil himself, but as soon as they entered the house, a large stone was seen to proceed from the fireplace and whirl around the floor, upward of 15 minutes without any stone being missed, upon which the gentleman instantly sneaked away. So these half-moon-shaped cuts, which appeared everywhere in bedding and clothing, gave the haunting its name, Wizard for a male witch, and clip for cutting shears. And in fact, a metallic snipping sound often accompanied the poltergeist phenomena. In addition, eyewitnesses heard the sounds of invisible galloping horses, money disappeared, clothing was burned, sometimes leaving handprints, the legs and heads of Livingston's chickens and geese would simply and suddenly drop off. The Livingston family reached out to 3 conjurers who gave them herbs, a book, and a riddle to catch the devil, but in the morning they found the herbs and books stuffed into a chamber pot, which was covered by the riddle. Protestant ministers either declined to help or were prevented from entering the house by being pelted with stones. This activity went on for years. Finally, Mrs. Livingston persuaded her husband to fetch Father Cahill, a Catholic priest, whose blessing seemed to work, but not for long. Cahill reached out to the Baltimore diocese, who sent Father Galitzin, a priest and Russian nobleman, to perform an exorcism. Now, it's very difficult to get permission to perform exorcisms in the Catholic Church, even back then. So in order to secure the Church's blessing, Father Galitzin took extensive notes on the haunting for 3 months, all of which have been archived. Reportedly, both the exorcism and the haunting ended when Father Galitzin visited the stranger's grave and read him his last rites. Adam Livingston eventually converted to Catholicism and donated a large parcel of his land to the church. The Priest Field Pastoral Center, established on those 36 acres in 1978, still stands to this day. For a long time afterwards, Smithfield became known locally as Wizard's Clip, and its inhabitants were called Clippers. Now it's just called Middleway, but is sometimes still referred to as Clip. So what we have here is an ancient American haunting, extremely well attested by eyewitness accounts, church documents, and newspaper articles, mostly lost to time, although unsurprisingly, Astonishing Legends did a fabulous episode on the Wizard Clip, so you should go listen to that. Not only did the poltergeist make mischief by throwing stones and hot embers and clipping articles of clothing, after Mr. Livingston's conversion, a disembodied voice began appearing to the family as well as several townspeople, instructing them in religious matters, specifically Catholic religious matters. Apparently, children could see this apparition, but adults could only hear it speak or see an arm. The book I previously mentioned reached out to the families of eyewitnesses of the Wizard Clip. I'll read just one example that it included. It included many. Quote, I myself was acquainted with an old lady who said that she remembered the circumstances. She was then a small child and lived at Harper's Ferry. She said that one lady had carried to the house a new cap, which for protection she kept in a reticule while in the house. Notwithstanding this, when she left the house, she found her cap all cut to pieces without injury to the reticule. And so a lot of times it's easy to dismiss hauntings and poltergeist activity as, whatever, a hoax or something made up. Now we'll see a clip on a paranormal compilation video and figure it was made with fishing line or something. But you have several instances throughout history, this one in particular, as well as the Bell Witch event, which had dozens, if not hundreds of people attest to the reality of some very, very weird goings on. And that kind of data should not be so easily dismissed.
My favorite thing is when you said people said that money went missing. I'm like, there's never been less compelling evidence of a haunting than money going missing.
Right.
Good point.
But that said, a lot of the other stuff is like very, very interesting. It was a really cool story. I'm most fascinated by the religious angle.
It's real. The Protestant Catholic thing is very strongly delineated in this story. And the history of it is largely preserved by the Catholic community. And in fact, there's some evidence, or someone said this, so that's not really evidence, that because a Catholic priest was able to stop the haunting, they didn't want to give them credit. So no, people just refused to talk about the Wizard Clip for like dozens of years because the Catholic came into a Protestant town. And also the voice, the disembodied voice, was very Catholic. So from my vantage point, it seems really silly. But then again, I think of these kinds of phenomena as being co-creative.
Right.
So there were strong feelings in the community, so they manifested.
Yeah, and there were strong feelings on the part of the man who died, who was Catholic.
I feel like the way we've talked about it is, I like when you use the word collaborative, or things seem to be mirror-like. If there's tension, then this entity or the idea of this entity, the agreed collective idea of this entity is going to be using the issues of the time, the things that are creating tension. And I mean, from a philosophical standpoint, it kind of makes a lot of sense. It's like, face your issues, people. Face it, It makes sense, but it's horrifying. Like, horrifying. I keep thinking about what it would be like to come home to something being, I mean, the way that you described it, am I right in interpreting that these things were just like completely confettied into like tiny little pieces that were so small that they were even
they were rendered useless as objects. If it was a saddle, this is significant. Try cutting into a saddle. Saddles, hats, handkerchiefs, boots, bedding, clothing. They were rendered particularly unusable, but the shape most often found was a half moon or a crescent
moon. Weird. That's so weird.
That's very strange. So people are like, oh, the stranger must have been a tailor, right? And those were his
Sure.
shears. Or other people were like, oh, the half moon. They say half moon. I see a crescent moon in my mind, not a half moon. But people were like, well, that's an occult symbol. And the other thing is that the town has adopted that image to this day. There, you find little crescent moons all over the town.
Like almost identity at any cost. Like even if it comes from like some horrifying story, it's like, that's our thing.
Yeah, that's
You know
ours.
what I mean.
Hey, yeah, the Squonk Festival. And then you go around Middleway, West Virginia, and you see shapes of crescent moons and scissors all over the town. That's their thing, man.
I've never heard this story before. The wizard clip.
Did you say this was
Yeah.
close to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia?
One of the witnesses lived in Harper's Ferry, so I don't think it's too far away.
I lived close to Harper's Ferry when I was young for a
Okay.
couple of years. It's very beautiful. And I always wondered why all my clothes wound up with crescent moon cuts in them, and now...
No, I know.
You know what? The image that comes to mind most clearly for me, hearing this story, is I'll call it like the Battle of Egregores. It's like you have the sort of egregore of Protestantism versus the egregore of Catholicism. And I'm not even going to come out and try to support or refute any truth claims here, but there does seem to be this sort of physicalized manifestation of collective belief or import, something that feels committed to on a very deep level by a whole community of people. And I think this story is amazing. I think it's so cool, like top to bottom. Like I feel like I know my homework now is I'm going to be going to listen to that Astonishing Legends episode about this because it's fantastic. I'm almost speechless actually. It's like the more I think about.
What's interesting
It's
is
such
that
a perfect narrative too. Like it's cinematic the way, and it's got like it's got a great ending.
There's a reason for that. It's not that it didn't happen. It's not that there weren't extraordinary events. Those seem very, very well documented. But there may have not ever been a stranger. I read a version of the story where Livingston himself, who used to live in Pennsylvania, was already a haunted man, quite literally, when he moved to Virginia, that he had already been experiencing that kind of stuff. So then you get into the idea of the revenge haunting of the Catholic stranger who dies, who has no name, by the way, who is frustrated in being given last rites and takes out revenge. That may not be the case at all.
It's been mythologized. It's been cleaned up narratively. Yeah.
Protestant authors of the legend or of the story, it should be noted that this story predates the term poltergeist. It literally didn't even exist at that time.
Sure.
So they talk about it being the same thing with the Bell Witch. It's done by a wizard. It's done by a witch, right? And then the Catholic authors ascribed it to evil spirits or ghosts.
Sure.
So literally the name Wizard Clip was probably a Protestant name. And all that stuff about all the stuff that happened, the supernatural visitations after the exorcism, those could be later additions. The heavenly ghost who appears and is righteous. People talk about an angel. It leads them in prayer and all this stuff. Sounds suspiciously like some later additions to some New Testament Gospels.
We know that's one of your favorite bones, Tom.
Well,
I'll chomp on that bone elsewhere.
I think that's one of the reasons that, not to be a Debbie Downer, but these stories are less satisfying for me is because they're so old that I almost do what I do with scripture with them, where it's like, oh, what shall I learn from this tale? But I feel so far removed from it and so far removed from the realities of the situation that sometimes it's like, yeah, but where did they hear that? From some piece of napkin that somebody wrote on and it like was recovered in someone's personal effects, like by their granddaughter. And
well, Mallory, I do actually. No, I appreciate that. I find myself doing kind of the opposite, and I love that you relate it to scripture actually, because I do the same thing if I'm trying to get a better experience with any kind of very old removed story or narrative or text or something. That I find it most productive to, and I know I'm not going to get it right, but like to at least try to bring it all the way down to my own experiential level in terms of imagining what may have actually been happening, what these people were actually experiencing in the moment and then afterward, and like how they were trying to understand it and like trying to like get into their shoes as much as possible. And of course, like I'm going to get all kinds of things wrong. It's not really about the accuracy. It's more about like trying to establish that feeling of connection, which is like these people went through something, and we have this limited data about what they went through based on what was recorded. And there's, this sort of constellation of perspectives. And so you can kind of assemble a blurry picture. And then I try to get into that by clarifying it with my own brain. Like, how would this have felt if I was there? Or if these were people as I understand people are and were behaving the way humans behave, which is always this sort of complicated mix of credulity and, and deceit and confusion and also incredible clarity sometimes. Like, you'll never get a better representation of truth than from a human in some instances, because there's no one else available to represent the truth.
I hear you, but there is a part of me that's always going to say like, man, if they're telling the truth, I would feel like this. But the older the story, the louder the opposite voice is. The voice that's like, I wonder which parts of this story aren't true, or I wonder what parts of this story are being misconstrued or have been passed down the decades and centuries in a game of telephone. It's like
I can shed light on that. There are two narrative engines at work with this story, as from my perspective. The first is meaning, and the other is direct experience. The people who are assigning meaning, and the meaning that they assign, is probably the least believable, because it's like with any ghost story, you really want to button it up. Oh, it was a Catholic stranger who was a tailor who died, which explains everything. Yeah. That all seems to come later. But the book that I mentioned, the monograph, The Mystery of the Wizard Clip, which was published in the 1800s, the priest who wrote it, the Jesuit priest who wrote it, went to extraordinary lengths to contact the families of eyewitnesses. And what I found immediately was that there were people from all over who came to see it. One person wrote about their ancestors traveling 75 miles to witness the events on horseback. So it took them a really long time. And that what they witnessed, multiples of them, there would be several family members in many cases, what they witnessed was passed down as durable oral history through their families. So 100 years later, when this guy's writing the book, people are like, yes, either my parents or grandparents witnessed this and this is what they told us, or I knew an old lady who was a child and who witnessed it. And that I found quite striking. So this person tried, bless him, to get as close to primary sources as possible. And he collated that. He put a bunch of those reports together. That's probably half his book, are reproductions of letters that those people sent him.
Yeah, well, and like getting above all of it and then looking at like the map where all the data points are and all the different people and being like, well, maybe each individual piece could be weak on its own, but all together, it is very interesting.
I'm so tempted to end the episode right there, where Mal just says, it is very interesting, and then it's just done.
Now it's over.
That's it's
now
true,
it's
though.
over.
There's nothing to add to that. Boom goes the dynamite.
Couple of quick reminders before you go. First off, if you haven't left a rating on your platform of choice, please do that. One of the first things people look at when they're judging a show by its cover is the number of ratings it has. So if you dig what we're doing, show it with stars. Also, in today's epilogue, we talked about the 2 beers and a puppy friendship test, Irish hospitality traditions where strangers might be fae in disguise, and why true courage means defending your ideological opponents to your own in-group. If you want to hear it, go to godsghostsufos.com or find the link in the description. See you next week, friends.